Horror is a genre I'll admit usually isn't my cup of tea, for many reasons. It's not that I don't like to be scared, but on the contrary, that my brain knows the scares are coming. When I play an old school survival horror game with tank controls, I'm not afraid of the enemies chasing me, I'm frustrated with those poor controls. When I play a more modern horror experience, I'm not afraid of the monster that I cannot fight, a monster that I can only run and hide from. I'm sitting there, silently judging the crutches that developers continue to place on the player, rather than invoking true, unquestionable fear. Fear is difficult, I get that. That's why jump scares are so popular. But today, I want to take a look at what I consider to be the greatest horror game made to date. It certainly still uses some of these crutches here and there, but for dozens of hours, my heart was pounding consistently. My eyes would race back and forth across the screen, scanning, planning, and most of all, fearing. It's one of the few horror games where showing the monster enhances the experience, and perhaps most importantly, boo! James, we said no jump scares, remember?
Aw, crap, man. I'm sorry.
And perhaps most importantly, it's a game I don't think I can cover alone. On today's episode of The Golden Bolt, join me and my good friend Stuff We Play for our jump scare free review of Alien Isolation. Isolation can be seen as a midquel of sorts between the first Alien film and its sequel, Aliens. As such, if you haven't watched much of the Alien series yet, prepare for the next couple sentences to confuse you. 15 years after the events of Alien 1, Ellen Ripley's daughter Amanda is working for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, still quietly trying to find out what happened to her mother after all these years.
The corporation has recently found out that the black box for Ellen's ship, the Nostromo, is stationed on a ship harbored at a decommissioned space station known as Sevastopol. Weyland-Yutani really wants his flight recorder, sending Amanda and 2 others to the station to investigate.
Once on board, and separated from her crew due to a spacewalk gone awry, Amanda finds that the ship has been sprung into chaos by, you guessed it, the alien xenomorphs. From here, Amanda works to find more information about the Nostromo's disappearance, and discover what happened to Sevastopol. If it sounds at all like we're brushing past the plot, it's because it's not very good. Amanda, for almost the entire game, plays as this icy, emotionless character, often concerned more with finding more clues about her missing mother than anything or anyone else. In that way, she does feel like her mom, but if it weren't for the game tying into the events of Alien, there would be no reason to play as a Ripley at all here.
The voice performances, both for Amanda and the characters she meets along the way, leave quite a bit to be desired, and while the plot doesn't ever really feel contrived, there's a lot of in-the-moment storytelling that doesn't really matter when discussing the overall narrative.
I don't want to get into spoiler territory, not that there's all that much to spoil, but I will say that near the end of the game, Amanda starts to come together a little bit as a leader, and it's at this point that she most resembles her mother. But I'm talking about the very tail end of a 20-hour game.
And yes, you heard him right, 20 damn hours. That this is all we have to say about a story that runs that long is a pretty big knock.
The saving grace of the plot is that there are often computer logs spread around Sevastopol that highlight the experiences of others on the space station, but flavor text doesn't make up for a weak main story. A bronze bolt might be a bit harsh, but it feels fair here. I know, giving what I just called the greatest horror game of all time a bronze bolt right off the bat probably isn't a good look. But Isolation succeeds because of how good it is at being scary, not the story it's telling to justify said scary. As I said at the top of the video, for practically this entire 20-hour experience, I was afraid. There were astonishingly few moments where I could catch my breath. I don't give a damn about the piece of cardboard I'm playing as, because myself, I was on the edge of my seat. The reason for this is, while I might be playing as cardboard, I'm absolutely not playing against it. See, Alien Isolation's title is fitting for 2 reasons. Obviously, you're working alone for almost the entire game, but also because if you shorten that title, it becomes AI, or Artificial Intelligence. The single thing that makes this game so compelling is that the alien is an intelligent beast that over the course of the game will learn from your actions and adjust itself accordingly. Just like in the movies, there's not all that much you can do to try and stop it. If it sees you, you're just about dead. You can try and shoot it with a gun, but it's just gonna laugh it off and eat your face. If you're a little too fond of hiding under tables, in vents, or in lockers, it's gonna catch on quickly and start looking there, and it's gonna eat your face. If you walk under ceiling vents and miss the acid saliva dripping from it, yep, it's gonna eat your face. You can try and save often at the save station so that when you do die, you're not sent back nearly as far, but even saving takes a few incredibly long, insanely tense seconds, during which the alien could spot you and, you guessed it, eat your face. The best thing you have at your disposal to at least try to hold the xenomorph off is the flamethrower once you obtain it, but even that isn't some sort of saving grace. Hitting the alien with it sometimes sends it fleeing to regroup, but other times it sends it charging into you out of anger. If you have some spare health after that, you might have gotten off with a warning, but if you were already low on health, you may think you've survived, only to see the xenomorph slowly slide back into view to let you know, yet again, it's gonna eat your face. No matter how the game equips you, it's only a stopgap, delaying what seems like the inevitable.
With the exception of a few chapters here and there, the alien is omnipresent, climbing through the vents above and watching and listening for its next meal. If you walk a little too fast, leave your flashlight on in a dark room for too long, or make a little too much noise, it's going to check it out. Even the motion tracker you receive early on is both a blessing and a curse. As well, it lets you keep tabs on your two-mouth buddy. If the alien is too close, it can even hear the tracker's beeps. As it learns, you have to learn too, and you have to outsmart a truly genius creature in order to survive, let alone progress. However, while this makes for a brutal experience, it's very rarely, if ever, unfair. After some time, the alien always retreats to another room or to the vents above. If you're in an area with limited visibility due to smoke or fire, or if you're in a louder area, then the alien is similarly handicapped, giving you much more room to make it out in one piece. You will also be able to learn through dozens of audio and visual cues when the alien might make its appearance, and on lower difficulties you're given much more leeway when you inevitably do mess up.
While I initially beat the game on hard, when I went back on lighter difficulties, I discovered that the alien's hissing if it sees you is actually a cue for you to get out of sight right now, and it might not actually see you, rather than being the game's way of politely telling you you're already dead. Even on hard, the alien will adjust its difficulty dynamically based around how you're playing if the game senses you're struggling too much. It's always more than enough to make you incredibly uncomfortable, but it's rarely too much that it becomes frustrating.
So let's backtrack a bit, as the alien isn't the only thing you're going to deal with in isolation. In fact, the other enemies, such as hostile humans and these androids known as Working Joes, help highlight just how good the alien is. Both are much more easily distracted and handled with, depending on your playstyle. If you're more of a fighter, humans naturally die pretty quickly, while Working Joes often take a good number of hits to bring down. If you would rather continue to sneak around, neither will search in vents or closets for you unless they outright see you enter them, so you have a few safe spots. And if you want the most sinister route, the alien would love another meal if you make enough noise to summon it. Interestingly enough, the alien never tries to fight the Working Joes, and we learn later on in the story why the Working Joes never try to fight the alien.
No matter what you do, you've got to be calculated. One loud noise could bring the xenomorph running, so your guns are more often a problem than a solution. Your best bet throughout the entire game is to stay crouched, to peer around every corner, to analyze every room and all the paths within that you can take, and to do first and foremost whatever it takes to survive. Everything else, even your objective, comes second.
Instead of using weapons, you can find blueprints spread throughout the station that you can use to craft items such as a medkit, a smoke bomb, Molotovs, or an EMP mine that will temporarily disable most Working Joes. Each item requires certain parts and a set number of scrap to make, and all of this is spread around Sevastopol in containers, on desks, wherever you can find it. This is where the second point of alien stress comes into play. Do I craft another medkit in case I get hurt, or do I craft a noisemaker so that I can lure the alien into another room and progress without dying?
While I'm certainly not a fan of resource management or artificial scarcity in horror games, Alien approaches it in a unique way. Even on hard, you are usually not going to be out of materials, just a little bit lower than you would be comfortable with. Instead, the scarcity comes from fear of conflict. I'm usually a hoarder in games. If it's valuable, I want it, and I want all of it. In isolation, there were countless times when I would outright skip past cleaning a room of all of its resources because it just wasn't worth it to risk the alien spotting me. Alien Isolation scared me out of my natural gaming instincts. I'm not sure I can put it any better than that, just how good this game is at horror.
And that's just it. There are so many moments in this game that we could just cite in a massive list to tell you how scary it is and how good it is at being scary. Except scary is such an understatement here. This game is terrifying. Absolutely petrifyingly terrifying. The most mundane of tasks, such as hacking into a door or entering a key code from memory, become infinitely more tense when you've got the xenomorph prowling around somewhere nearby. Cleaning out a room of supplies, even if they're helpful supplies, drops lower on your list of priorities when it's a battle, a struggle, to move from one room to the next.
I can't tell you how many times I've sat there staring at a save station for a moment, wondering if I can even get to it without dying. This is a game where save points are few and far between, and where death sets you back to the last save point, and saving in itself is scary enough that I outright passed a couple times to just try and make it further.
That's not to say the scares are perfect at all times though. When it moves away from the alien, the game sometimes, albeit infrequently, loses its luster. The Working Joe sequences get a bit too much into formulaic hide-and-seek during some sections, as unsettling as they are.
Oftentimes, these androids bring jump scares to the table, as you walk past a dead android and it comes back to life, grabbing your leg. These feel cheap the first few times they do happen, and funnily enough, you can even tell when they're going to happen half the time because the Joe's eyes are still lit up. And no, you can't preemptively kill them. Trust me, I've tried. You can just take a wide berth around them though. When I first saw Alien Isolation, I thought it would take the easy way out and go the route so many modern horror games do, but I am so glad to say that it didn't. Everything in this game feels meticulously designed to keep you at peak afraid for the entire ride, even down to the infrequent points where you get to take a breather.
The gunplay in combat, should you go that route, feels fine, if a bit futile. If you play the much more helpful stealth route, sneaking in misdirection feels just as good.
Really, the only other concern that I would have is that this game is as long as it is. It finds a way to keep any single slice interesting, but 20 hours is long for a horror game, especially one with as much backtracking as Alien. It almost feels like this game was a dare, like somebody at Sega argued that you can't make a horror game more than 4 or 5 hours long without it starting to fall apart, and then Creative Assembly took the bet. I'm beyond impressed that they were able to pull it off, but I'm sure many people turned the game off out of sheer exhaustion. You can only be so scared for so long before you have to take a break.
Even still, Isolation's pacing very rarely, if ever, suffers from its scope, and while the length means it might not be for everyone, it certainly does not mean it wasn't fantastically designed. Too much of a good thing isn't always good, but in Alien's case it highlights just how strong the horror is.
Even if the main game's length concerns you though, Alien has over half a dozen DLC packs that twist the gameplay down to a smaller scale, continuing to show the Alien AI off in different ways. Most of these are a sort of challenge mission set somewhere already in the game, asking you to complete new objectives under a set time limit and with certain limitations.
2 other packs are hand-built, putting you in the shoes of the Nostromo's crew, including all of the original actors reprising their roles for the first time since Alien 1. That means you can essentially play through that film in first person as one of the crew members, which is absolutely awesome.
Neither of us have had the chance to fully dive into these expansions, but as far as the game's flow is concerned, there are more than enough ways to play Alien Isolation both in short bursts and over a long haul. While it falls into some of the same traps as other horror games, such as the occasional jump scare, it spares the Alien itself of any of these issues, and while I did see the Alien glitch once or twice on lower difficulties, on hard, it is the single most terrifying thing I have ever experienced in a video game. To execute that so well for such a sustained period is more than I could ever ask out of a horror game. Isolation easily receives a golden bolt for its gameplay.
Isolation, as far as it goes visually, may as well have been the real Alien 2 that we never got. The development team worked around the clock to match the original film's vibe, even down to the 1970s film grain. The studio even received tons of behind-the-scenes material showing the original sets and concept art. Naturally, this means that Isolation feels so accurate to Alien to the point that it might be one of the most accurate licensed games ever made.
There's something about the visuals that are just so naturally unsettling in Isolation. Maybe it's seeing so much old technology put together that makes me feel uneasy about the entire space station. Maybe it's the gorgeous lighting, the decrepit station falling apart right in front of you, the hazy dust. It all feels perfectly horrific. Or is it horrifically perfect?
Speaking of things that are terrifying, the weakest aspect of the visuals is without a doubt the human character models. Even in the game's pre-rendered cutscenes, the lip syncing is off, let alone the actual gameplay, and as a whole, these people just sort of fall into that uncanny valley.
At the very least, the working Joes are designed much better, or I guess worse? They're in that same valley, but intentionally, and seeing them consistently freaks me out. So, good job on that one. I will also say that at least Amanda's movements do feel realistic. She struggles climbing out of elevator shafts, she cowers when inside lockers, and so on. In a fantastic little touch, her perspective even blurs out the background slightly when she's focusing on her motion tracker. But with the simple tap of one of the triggers, you can shift it back to her surroundings and blur the tracker itself out a bit. That's something tiny, but it's a welcome addition that certainly helped me more times than I expected. The star of the show, obviously, is the alien. Its walk cycle and almost all of its movements stand the test of time, which makes total sense seeing as how it's the one thing you're gonna see the most. A few bad steps could have easily taken players out of the moment, but that very rarely happened in my experience. The worst I had was when I was playing on easy and forgot I had the PS4's camera on. So the alien heard me jokingly yelling at it, and it started yelling back while right next to me instead of, hunting for me.
Oh yeah, speaking of that, there are even some options that make use of the connector PS4 camera so that you can get even more immersed in the experience. The cameras will track you so that you can peek around corners using your body, and if you make a loud noise in real life, enemies will hear it and come a-running. These options are definitely not for the faint of heart.
What I really wish we would get is a full-fledged PSVR mode. I'm not sure I could handle how horrifying isolation would be if I, myself, was in Sevastopol. I know it's probably not possible considering the game only runs at 30 frames per second compared to what the PSVR needs at 90 plus, but a man can dream.
Going back to visual bugs, while the alien itself is fine, there are a good number of issues with items such as the maintenance jack getting stuck floating in midair. Most of these affect gameplay in no way whatsoever, but it's goofy little things like this that can really take people out of the experience.
The audio, though, most likely won't distract you from the experience, and will probably hook you in even more. The soundtrack of the first movie was dissected, expanded, and enhanced to bring that same vibe here, and yet again, it works masterfully. Probably none of it will stick out in your head a few months from now, but none of it really needs to. It's here to highlight what's happening in front of you. Even the sound effects, down to the dull beeping of the motion tracker, are hand-picked to keep that eerie feeling floating over your head. Those alien screeches, though, or the choking of a working Joe after you've killed it, those might haunt you for a while to come.
A horror game is usually nothing without its presentation, and Creative Assembly spared no expense in making Isolation not only play, look, and sound like a proper Alien video game, but they made sure it's a kind of game that sticks with you because of just how good it is at making you feel total terror. Even the few bugs there are don't take away from what it accomplishes, and as such it absolutely earns a golden bolt for its presentation as well.
And that's about it for Alien Isolation. I wish I could say I was excited for an Isolation 2, but considering how the first one just about broke even financially, I doubt Sega's in any rush to greenlight a sequel. If we ever do get one though, you can be damn sure I will be playing that day one, because I don't think I'll have another horror game that captures me as well as this one did anytime soon. What about you, James?
I completely agree, and I thought Alien Isolation was about as stone cold solid as you could get from a horror game. And speaking things that are stone cold solid, we looked at a game over on my channel called Little Medusa, which is a new game that was just released for both the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis.
Did you just do a stone pun? You just did a pun on my channel, and you expect me to do a video with you afterwards.
Yes I did.
Why do you have a picture of Steve Austin? Oh, it's because he's the Texas rattlesnake, and Medusa has snakes for hair. Okay, fine. I'll do the video.
Excellent.
Special thanks to James from Stuff We Play for joining me for this video, and if you want to check out our review of Little Medusa over on his channel, you can click that video right there on your screen.